Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Big Me Kickoff on a Saturday afternoon. I guess it's slightly afternoon here. I'm your host, Kevin Noon. Sometimes you go into a show planning to do a show, and other times the show just kind of happens because of news. And this is one of those where the show is predicated by the news. And obviously, if you're here, you've heard the news. Dylan Raiola has decommitted from Ohio State. I believe that Steve Wiltfong of 24/7 Sports was the first one to have it out there. I also know Hayes Fawcett had something too from On Three. Not going to get into who really had it first. I'm not sure, but what we do know is that Ohio State no longer has a quarterback in the class of 2024, and quarterback recruiting has been interesting as of late. But one thing that we know for certain is that Ohio State recruiting at that position has not been a challenge under Ryan Day. Now, there certainly there's been movement before. Ohio State had Brock. Let me jump in here for Henry, California. Henry, California. What happened? I don't know the specifics, but we'll get into that. I'm planning on going about a half hour. I've thrown up the bat signal. Maybe somebody from the huddle staff will be able to join me. Maybe not. I know that everybody was kind of running around doing some other things today. I have to run in and go do some other things as well at like 3 o'clock. So I'm like, well, we're going to do this show. Let's do it while the news is hot. And 80 of you have jumped in here already in the first 90 seconds of the show. So obviously, y'all want to talk about this. I want to be able to give you the news. I know what I know. I don't know what I don't know. But let me kind of get back into my thought. And, when we'll go through, let me run through a couple of comments. I'm producing my own show as we go. So bear with me. If I don't get your comment up there, just got a lot going on. I'm trying to get my thoughts together. Honestly, it was a matter of let's go find something to throw on clothes-wise and turn on the machine. Let's start talking about it. Odysseus, NIL's ruining the sport. Well, it's something. It's something. We'll talk about NIL in here. Again, we're live. So you guys will dictate some of the conversation here. This is one thing I'm going to say, though. This is not the outlet to trash the kid. Nobody has yet. I've not read it in the chat, but I'm not going to punch those comments through. Everybody is entitled to their own recruitment, to handle it the way they want to handle it. This is just not the avenue that I will not go in that. I'm not going to be a party of that. So I'm going to say that now. More people will join in. Probably won't hear the speech, but I'm just not going to punch that through. I'm not here to trash these kids. They can make their, they can make their own decisions and they can go kind of from there. So PSA out of the way. But, back to the point that I was saying, all right, I gotta get to Jordan Kapler's comment here. Quit trying to bury the lead here, Kevin. We know this decommitment is Tom Orr's fault. Absolutely. Stupid ass Met fans. Come on, man. Come on. No, but in all seriousness, it's all right. Yes. Reaper the Creeper, his uncle is on the staff at Nebraska. Guess what? His uncle was on the staff at Nebraska prior to the commitment. He was just retained by Matt Rule versus Scott Frost. So there's no real difference there. Honestly, I don't think Nebraska is the culprit. I think it's USC. But let me get back in there and go through the piece. And I know you guys are going to fire off a lot of questions. Same rules apply here. Super chats get to the top. Will even stop me in telling my spiel. But let me try and get through the things that I can right here. I know probably people are like, I'm not feeling really giving on a show about bad news. Well, I know. I didn't think we were going to be doing this show. And here we are. Ohio State had quarterback in the 23 class in Brock Glenn. I think Ohio State and Brock Glenn kind of came to a bit of a mutual agreement that they were going in separate directions. Brock Glenn decommits. Ohio State had already gone out and started watching Lincoln Kienholz. I've been told that it's not Kienholz, it's Kienholz out of Pierre, South Dakota. Brock Glenn commits to Florida State, who was another finalist for his commitment at the time. And Ohio State moves on and just recently picks up Lincoln Kienholz. So they have their quarterback for 23. But let's remember, in 2022, when they go and they get Devin Brown, they're going all over kind of the board there too, and they end up with, at least in one of the services, the number one quarterback. with Devin Brown. So, strange things happen. We got a lot of things that are happening in terms of where recruitments go, with NIL happening, with everybody, everybody's got is getting pulled in 50 different directions. And I think a lot of this stuff now is just more visible. I always felt that even in the old days when they were maybe getting paid under the table. And I'm not saying any guy specifically. I mean, I guess I can say that about SMU back in the day because that's all well documented. We maybe weren't seeing as much of the tugging that was happening there. But I mean, these guys are getting pulled in all sorts of directions, and it's recruitment. I mean, this is not a case of where nobody can come out and say, "Oh, he's being tampered with." He's an unsigned player. We don't know anything that's going on. He until he signs, and that can't be for another year because he's a class of 24. Everybody's going to be out there and everything's going to be going on, and NIL is going to get thrown around, and we can kind of get into the argument there that Ohio State may not have the secret sauce yet for NIL. One other thing I want to kind of say too is don't come into the chat just to be an a-hole. All right? I see you. You can sit there and be a fan of somebody else. We welcome everybody here, but don't just go there to not help things out. I mean, just don't. Come on. It's no. But so let me kind of get back to my thought. I just saw a comment that I didn't necessarily like. So where do they go from here? Yeah, I know CJ Sugar Ray, you're here to be an a-hole, but you can at least let me get through my opening monologue first. Where do they go from here? Because that's the biggest question. Remember that, all right, let me jump here. Mika Hanna saying, can we get him back? It is a very rare situation where a player decommits only to recommit. Now, if you truly believe that this is just 100% about there are better offers out there in terms of NIL, I mean, maybe if Ohio State fixes its NIL situation, I guess, potentially. But generally, guess what? I know right now there are going to be people on Twitter eviscerating this kid. If you want to get the kid back, don't go on Twitter and tell the kid what you think about him. That doesn't help. Let me look here. I was committed and y'all loved me like 2 days ago, and now you're calling me this? They're not coming back. They're not going to come back under those circumstances. And it's, I think that a lot of people who are in this chat are probably not the ones that are guilty of it, but there certainly are a lot of people that are guilty of it. I also think that there are a lot of bad actors out there that claim to be a fan of a certain school who are not a fan of that school, who go out there to try and create drama, controversy, bad feelings. That's one of the problems with social media is we know, we don't know where anybody comes from. But I sit there and I'll see somebody, it's like, oh, they signed up for Twitter in December of 2022. And now they're suddenly acting like they're the wicked grand poobah of Ohio State fans. I think that's a bunch of bull. So, hey, JS, I am not blaming fans for any of this. I'm just saying, if you want to get them back, don't go on social media and be an asshole. Just don't. If you don't want them back, then we know what's going to happen there. But I have been around this industry long enough to see what happens there. I talk to the kids. I know what happens. And I mean, I know what happens to the kids that play for Ohio State and the stuff that they hear. I know exactly what happens there. They've told me, they've shown me their Twitters before. And it's appalling. It is appalling what some people out there will say. So, take it for what it is. I am not blaming fans for the decommitment, but I am blaming fans absolutely if they go in and go sideways on this kid and they're like, I don't understand why he didn't come back. Let me show you your Twitter account and then we'll understand why. But, let's kind of move forward because the question is, where now? So take Dylan Raiola off the board. He's decommitted, probably not coming back. It's all well and good. You can kick the tires on that one all you want. Let me go to the number 2 name on the 24/7 list because we don't do our own rankings, so we generally use 24/7. Jaden Davis out of North Carolina. Now, let's remember that Jaden Davis absolutely liked Ohio State early in the process, and Dylan Raiola got in before him. So, probably were some hurt feelings that Ohio State was not able to. I'm going to put this question here because I'm going to get to it in a minute. Probably some hurt feelings that he wasn't able to get through his process in time to see things out with Ohio State one way or the other. A lot of people believe that Michigan was probably the school to beat when that happened. Kind of a Kyle McCord, J.J. McCarthy situation. Let's not forget, J.J. McCarthy was an Ohio State fan. Ohio State was more of a Kyle McCord fan when it came to a head-to-head battle of which quarterback it was that they were going to take. So Ohio State goes with Kyle McCord. J.J. McCarthy goes to Michigan, not because he's just pissed off at Ohio State. Michigan was the best fit for him. And I guarantee you, J.J. McCarthy ain't no Ohio State fan anymore. I promise you that. But, so now you have a situation where Jaden Davis is, has got 4 schools or whatever. I mean, I think Penn State, UNC, Michigan, and somebody else at that point. But, so does Ohio State find a way to get back in there? And it's like, hey, we still love you. We'd love to check you out. I mean, we're talking about a year away from National Signing Day, and these kids ultimately have to make a business decision of what's going to be best for them. It's not a matter of I grew up as a fan of this school, I grew up as a fan of that school. You need to go where you feel that you're going to be developed. And I'm going to throw out an opinion that probably won't be super popular with the Michigan fans who have found their way to our channel. Up until J.J. McCarthy, Jim Harbaugh's quarterback development at Michigan was booty. It was terrible. Guys were getting worse. You bring in Shea Patterson from Ole Miss, and he was a worse quarterback leaving Michigan than he was heading in. So J.J. McCarthy is the first guy to take a step forward. But the thing is that J.J. McCarthy at least is more of a peer of Jaden Davis than some of these other guys. So, he can look and say, well, J.J. McCarthy, he's heart of a champion going out there kicking ass. So, I don't know what's going to happen on Jaden Davis. But let me get to Larry's question here. Will this hurt us with Jeremiah Smith? I don't know. Where's Brian Hartline going? Where's Keenan Bailey going? The Ohio State is not suddenly not going to have a quarterback. It's not going to be a case of where quarterback recruiting ends and dies with this decommitment of Dylan Raiola, and Ohio State's never going to get a quarterback again, or we're going to go back into the early 90s when Ohio State was really not getting much in the way of quarterback. This is still a very great position to be the Ohio State starting quarterback when you look at what the 24 quarterback is going to walk in with. Because the 24 quarterback is going to walk in with the 2023 kids already there in a year in. Brandon Ennis, Carnell Tate, Noah Rogers, Bryson Rogers. Those guys there, Jeremiah Smith. These receivers know that they're going to be fine. And let's be real. Even if Kyle McCord is the guy who comes in, who's already a couple of years into the system, Ohio State still, does Devin Brown stick around and McCord gets the job or vice versa? I don't have a time machine. I can't go forward on there to tell you exactly what everybody's thinking. I don't think that these thoughts have been fully formed with any of these players. I mean, you have Lincoln Keenholz. I mean, people have talked about, does Ohio State look at a transfer quarterback? I don't think you look at a transfer quarterback to come in to be your starter. I don't think that that's the situation. I think you can kind of go in and get a Gunnar Hoke type situation where you have somebody who helps fill out the depth in the room, but none of that's going to help you in 24. And here right now going into 23, and we still have Ohio State with at least one more game in 22. Regardless of what your thoughts are on the upcoming Peach Bowl, Ohio State has a lot of time to figure this out. As I've seen multiple times on social, and I agree with it, better that this happens now, December 17th, 2022, than this happens December 10th, 2023. It's best that it happens now. You have a lot of time. I am looking at a list of top quarterbacks. And yes, there are guys that are already committed. CJ Carr to Notre Dame, DJ Lagway to Florida, uh, Julian Sayin to Alabama. What's to say that Ohio State can't flip a guy? What's just, so what's, where you don't know what's going to happen at this point. Ohio State was sitting prior to the May commitment of Dylan Raiola on his birthday, May 7th, 9th, something like that, with the number 1 and the number 2 quarterback in the nation, really wanting to go to Ohio State. Now, Jaden Davis could have tried to commit and maybe be able to head Dylan Raiola off at the pass, but if you're a top 2 player at your position, I'm probably not going to be held captive by a situation. We're not going to go back to the old Walt Harris days when he was at Ohio State and Ohio State offered 4 quarterbacks and said, first 2 in are in. Well, that happened. Austin Mockerman in. David Priestley in. Jesse Palmer not in. Now, that's not to say that Jesse Palmer would have been what he was at Florida at Ohio State, but, quarterbacks aren't going to, especially at quarterback, because quarterback's one of those crazy positions in terms of they get so much more blame than they deserve and they get so much more credit than they deserve. They're always the big fish in a small pond. That's just the nature of the position. But, they're not going to sit there and be held hostage of like, you have to now or never. There might be some guys at the last second of a recruiting class that get the 5-second exploding offer. We're offering you right now, but only if you accept right now. And if you don't accept it right now, we're never going to confirm that we offered you. You don't do that at quarterback. That is not how quarterback recruiting works. But to Larry's question, absolutely not. This has no bearing whatsoever on Jeremiah Smith, in my opinion. Dylan Raiola was not necessarily super tight on the regular, going throughout with the SFE, with the South Florida Express kids. Certainly there were connections there. There was some conversation there. But Jeremiah Smith is not going to Ohio State because of the 24 quarterback who's throwing to him at that point. Now, you do want to have a quarterback as kind of the bedrock of your class in a perfect situation who can kind of be the recruit whisperer and bring guys in. But Ohio State quarterback play is really the recruit whisperer at this point. Brian Hartline and Keenan Bailey are really recruit whisperers at this point. Ohio State is going to be just fine in terms of its recruiting. Now, there are not a lot of programs that can say that, I just lost the number 1 overall player in the nation. We're fine. A lot of them, we're host. We're screwed. This is terrible. Let me get here to Dale's comment. If this is USC, could this impact Mateo decision? No. Why? Why does Mateo, a defensive end, care about who the quarterback is in 24? It has nothing. I know that everybody is completely on edge. The nerves are raw. Nothing is right. My phone is blowing up. I'm watching text messages just populate my screen. I'm on a Mac, so I can see all of my text messages come up. The panic button has been hit. So, and that's not to get to Rick Sanchez's comment that I'm not punching through right now at this point, but people are concerned. I get it. Ohio State loses twice to Michigan. Don't give me this 3-time garbage. Ohio State would have bombed Michigan into the Stone Age if they would have played in 2020. Period. End of story. Not up for debate. So they didn't play them in 2020. So don't give me that crap. I'm not buying it. But so you lose to Michigan. You think you're out of the college football playoff. You feel that NIL is a rudderless ship. There are a lot of issues that are going on right now. The funny thing is that I sat there and I watched a couple of UGA press conferences. Their reporters are asking those same questions about where is NIL going? And this is with all the talk that, Damon Wilson is getting this huge bag to go to UGA. Nobody knows what is going on about with NIL at this point. One thing that I do feel is that Ohio State NIL is not where it needs to be. It's not where it needs to be. And I'm going to even get into something else that I talked about over on the message board at Buckeye Huddle. And I highly, highly recommend during these tumultuous times, if you're not a member at Buckeye Huddle, to check out BuckeyeHuddle.com. You sign up now for 50 cents a day, less than 50 cents a day. You're going to get National Signing Day next week. You're going to get the Peach Bowl. If Ohio State gets through UGA, I said if, I didn't say when. I said if. I haven't made my pick yet. You get the national championship game. Give us a try over at BuckeyeHuddle.com for less than 50 cents a day. A lot of stuff going on there. But to get to a point that I wanted to talk about is NIL and Ohio State athletic giving fly in the face of one another. There is a finite amount of dollars, truthfully speaking, when it comes to how much money people are going to donate to sports teams. I want to give $1,000 this year to sports teams because I feel I have the money to give it. I feel like I'm able to do it. You're not, if you've been giving $1,000 a year to Ohio State athletics or 5,000 or 10,000 or part of the President's Club or any of that, you're suddenly not going to be like, well, I'm going to give 1,000 to OSU and I'm going to give 1,000 to the NIL collectives. You're probably going to have to make some choices of where that money is going to go. Times are tough. People are probably not looking to up giving a whole lot. So you have the university on one side that has 36 teams to contend with. Football is profitable. Men's basketball, profitable. The other sports, not as profitable. So they need those dollars. And then on the other side, now it's kind of more of a situation of Ohio State needs the money going to NIL as well, too, to get the athletes in these high-profile sports, to be able to go and land these big fish. But I will say this, and I said this to a good friend of mine on text messages shortly before the news broke, but, you know, all of Dylan Raiola's Ohio State mentions had come off of the page and everything else, and people were very concerned, and I didn't really add excuse me, I didn't add a lot there because I didn't have any good information at the point. But you know, it's a difficult situation to maneuver. Ohio State still is not sure what's going on, and you have three collectives. Ohio State needs one collective. They need one collective moving in the right direction, not three collectives that, you know, one is very visible, and then you got these other two that, you know, they could be doing God's work behind the scenes, and I mean, but they're not very vocal, they're not very visible. You sit there and you look at what's going on. I mean, people are going to throw at me, well, look at what A&M is doing. They're great. A&M has 20 guys in the portal, 25 guys in the portal, guys who've gotten that first check and are out of there. So don't tell me that what A&M is doing is working. A&M is getting that oil money. A&M is got to, I mean, they're drawing the dollars, but that it doesn't mean that it's working. And when you sit there and you suddenly have a bunch of $2 million guys in the locker room, sight unseen, just coming in right from the beginning, that can't be great for the locker room. But let me reset here. We're about 25 minutes into the show. A lot of people have joined us as we're over 400. I appreciate everybody being here. I wish it was under better circumstances, but the news is the reason I sat there and jumped on here unplanned is that Dylan Raiola, class of 2024, number 1 overall prospect, is decommitted from Ohio State. We have not been given much more reason than that. A lot of internet sleuths want to sit there and say, well, he's going to go to Nebraska. I don't think so. I don't think so. Well, his uncle works there. His uncle worked there before he committed to Ohio State. His uncle worked there before under Scott Frost. So being retained by Matt Rule doesn't necessarily change the trajectory there. You know, we all want to sit there and, I mean, there's this belief that Nebraska is suddenly going to become a powerhouse again. Color me skeptical on that one. Nebraska doesn't have a natural recruiting territory. Nebraska could still figure out NIL better than anybody else in the Big Ten. I don't think it's necessarily going to change anything. Yes, Brad, Dylan was for class of 2024. He is not 2023. They have their commit for 2023, Lincoln Keenholz, who replaces Brock Glenn in the class. So we're talking a year out. We're talking a year out. Dylan Raiola still has another year of high school football, unless he suddenly magically reclassifies, which seems to be a thing these days, but that was never really the plan there, and from what I was told. So, that's where we stand right now. Mike Farina with a super chat. Matt Rule has been tweeting a bunch of cryptic tweets about a recruit commit in the last hour. They also have a 2020 kid from Arkansas who's there on a visit. Who, one thing we know is they need a quarterback. And let me tell you this: go ahead and commit to Nebraska. I'm going to put money on that one won't stick either if he were to commit to Nebraska. USC's calling. Other places are calling. I do not see a scenario of where Nebraska suddenly returns to this, whatever they were in the old Big 8, and then early days in the Big 12 before Texas ruined that conference. Their fans are great. They deserve better than the product they've had before. But if you don't have a time machine, they're not going to go back to powerhouse status. They're just not. And by the way, Mike, thank you for the super chat. They're just not going to go back to that status. They can't go and recruit Texas and be like, well, at least, it's a part of the territory they're in. They can't. I mean, you look at the state of Texas, you've got Big 12 with like Texas Tech and Baylor, and then you're going to have A&M, which is already in the SEC. You're going to have University of Texas, which is soon to be in the SEC. So they can't recruit Texas and Oklahoma. Recruit Nebraska all you want. Recruit Minnesota, fringe areas of Minnesota and the Dakotas and Western Iowa. Congratulations. You're going to get about 7 kids out of there. And people will be like, well, you can get Caden Proctor. Yeah, Caden Proctor's a hell of a player. I mean, with him and Xavier Nwankpa, there have been a couple of great kids who come out of Iowa here recently. But I don't think they're going to go to Nebraska. I don't know what's at the end of the rainbow for Nebraska. I don't know what's at the end of the rainbow. I'll tell you what I think is 9 wins. I think that's the end of the rainbow with the occasional 11-win season. I think that they can be under a 12-team playoff. I think they can make it in the playoff when they have the right scenario, when, they have veteran quarterback and veteran receivers, and they have a reasonable facsimile of the black shirts. They've been the black shirts here recently. They're horrible. That defense is horrible. So I'm not buying it, but they're having a huge recruiting weekend. So I don't know if it's necessarily going to be a jumping on for that. I mean, I think they've got like 10, 12 guys on campus. Hold on a second. Sorry. Again, I was not prepared to do this show. But I think that it's more likely that it's a school like a USC that's involved. And again, he's not a signed player. He is a recruitable athlete. There's no tampering. There's none of that stuff. Everything is out there. And it'll be interesting to see how Ohio State responds. I think Ohio State has to find a more aggressive approach in terms of NIL. But I also don't know how Ohio State, first of all, can't get its arms around the collectives. Ohio State, per NIL rules, it's very hands-off. You can't get involved. You can't direct giving. Now, that doesn't mean that there probably aren't programs out there that probably are walking up to that line and maybe even stepping up a little beyond the line. Ohio State is always slow to respond. Ohio State wasn't going to have $1 million assistant until it had $1 million assistant. Ohio State wasn't going to have a bunch of analysts like Alabama until it had a bunch of analysts like Alabama. Ohio State really kind of needs to look at how the NIL rules are written within the state of Ohio, because that's the governing situation here. This isn't the NC2A saying all things are equal. We've signed off on this. You're all operating by the same set of rules. This is something that went through the Ohio State House to set it up. So you have to see how your rules are written and what's going on. There certainly are some guardrails by the NC2A. I mean, you just can't sit there. Your state house can't say, well, do whatever. We're fine with it. We love the program too. Do whatever the hell you want. It doesn't work that way. But under the guardrails that are within the state of Ohio, they have to sit there and see if they're approaching it the right way and being as aggressive as they can be. And then it comes down to individual fans too of their donations. But I've never felt that it's a situation of where Joe fan and Jane fan have to sit there and be like, well, we can put $500 toward our vacation fund or $500 to the university. They need to be approaching businesses that already have a giving arm. They need to be maybe approaching former athletes who have come into generational wealth because of their successes at the university and probably would have a lot easier situation giving $5,000 than I would. Certainly much easier situation than I could. And no, I don't give to NIL. That would be a major conflict of interest. So just to get that out there in case anybody has heard something different. But I think there has to be a more aggressive approach. I think that there has to be a looking at how this is done. I think that NIL collectives need to be more about bringing in and soliciting donations than, hey, look at me. Here I am. This is about love for the university, not about love for yourself. This has got to be a situation of where you're trying to go out and get the money from the businesses and everything, go and approach, I don't know. People are like, well, you can just go after Wendy's and Safelight and all these businesses that are there. I mean, that's all well and good, but I don't necessarily think that University of Texas is going after Texas Instruments, and that's just for whatever reason the first Texas-based company I can think of, Dell Computer, and that's where everything's coming from. I don't know. It's a difficult situation to figure that out, but ultimately the biggest thing I think people want to talk about is, I'm starting to look back at the chat now, is where does Ohio State go now at quarterback recruiting for 24? Because I've seen all sorts of things thrown out there. I mean, let's look at another situation too. And I'm trying to remember the kid's name. He was out of Jacksonville, Colin Hurley, who was a 25 who reclassified to 24 and is committed to LSU. I know for a fact Colin Hurley really liked Ohio State too. I don't know this for a fact, but I guarantee you that Colin Hurley was probably not all that excited about the commitment of Dylan Raiola, because it's going to be really difficult to recruit the guy a year beyond the guy. Dylan Raiola is out of the equation now. I mean, unfortunately, in terms of that situation, LSU went whatever it was, 8-4 this year, but got some pretty good quarterback play. I think Ohio State takes a swing at Colin Hurley. I mean, as I said, I think Ohio State at least sees what Jaden Davis's thought is on some of these situations. I'm going through the list. There's one of the other situations that has happened is that we don't necessarily have the same positions represented at the top of the recruiting rankings out of the state of Ohio that used to be there before. No, D Brown, they're not losing recruits to Nebraska. Thanks for playing. So you have to, you're not getting those top end quarterbacks out of the state of Ohio right now. There have been some talented quarterbacks to come through. I'm sure that Luke Montgomery's brother Ryan, who's a 25 quarterback, would say, "Hey, yo, I'm here." He's a solid quarterback. I mean, I think he's definitely a national recruit, somebody Ohio State's very interested in. But year in and year out, there is not that Ohio State caliber quarterback every year out of the state of Ohio. Be a lot easier to hold on to that guy if that were the case, but it's not the case. That kid doesn't reside in Western Pennsylvania either. When I got into this industry 15, 20 years ago, you knew that there was going to be a quarterback worth his salt coming out of Ohio or Western PA, or more than one, multiple. And that just isn't there at this point. Let me get here. Who said he's going to Nebraska? Who? Oh, first time, long time, since this is your show now. Has that been announced? I've been on this show for 35 minutes. Where do you know this? Where do you know this? Tell me. How do you know this, D Brown? Or whoops, wrong one. All right, I'm not going to get into this. I'm salty. I haven't had lunch yet. I'm not trying to necessarily jump on anybody at this point. Ohio State recruiting is still going to be fine. Period. End of story. If Carnell Tate and Brandon Ennis would have held off their recruitments and committed in December, Ohio State fans would be over the moon, and people that don't like Ohio State would be pissed. But Carnell Tate and Brandon Ennis and guys like that committed very early in the process. So in doing so, all we're focused on right now is what's going on with Damon Wilson, what's going on with Mateo, what's going on with Joshua Mickens, what's going on at running back. We're not focused on the kids that are already in the class. So, nobody is talking about the guys that are going to be signing on Wednesday. They're all focused on what's left. And that was something that Jim Tressel ran into as well. Everybody talked about how Jim Tressel's recruiting always fell apart at the end, but we weren't talking about the kids who committed earlier on. We remember the Joseph Barksdales. We remember the Dwayne Jarretts. And, there were some titanic misses that happened at the end of the Tressel era. I'm not going to say that they weren't there, but we weren't talking about the guys that were earlier on in the process. We were not, that's just not the nature of the business. We talk about the current. There's a recency bias. We talk about what's happening this minute, not about the kid that committed at whatever point. And I just want to sit there and say, Dylan Raiola did Ohio State a favor in one instance, and that was by doing this now, a year out. If he would have done this 8 months from now, 10 months from now, 11 months from now, it would be a bad situation because Ohio State would have passed on all of these guys. Somebody rang my doorbell. Well, they're just going to have to wait. They're going to have to, Ohio State is just going to have to, deal with it. But, at this point, there are a lot of targets still on the board. There are a lot of guys there. Somebody's like, bring in DJ. Here's the problem. I don't know who's an Ohio State fan and who's not in terms of the chat. I don't know if this is a situation of, it's somebody who thinks they're being funny in that situation, or you truly believe. But I don't think DJ necessarily fits their system. And I don't think that bringing in DJ this year helps the Devin Brown, Kyle McCord race. I don't think again, they could look at the end of 23 and be like, if they're not necessarily impressed with anything they have, maybe they have to make a move at that point. But the point is, there is a lot still out there in play for Ohio State. And that's not necessarily saying it's Colin Hurley. That's not necessarily saying it's Jaden Davis. I know Mark Givler right now is writing an impact piece for Buckeye Huddle, again, for exclusive for our members. So I highly recommend, if you want more on this whole situation, give us a look. As I said, less than 50 cents a day. You sign up today, you're getting so much in this month. And I guarantee you sign up, you're gonna like us. You're gonna love us. You're gonna be part of our community. I mean, obviously, you've already shown that you like chatting here. So, why not do that with us every single day? Why wait for us to go live for something to be part of the conversation? So, I don't know. All right. I'm gonna get back here. He is a Nebraska football. I'm not going to apologize to you. 2, he could have committed to Nebraska 8 months ago. Why didn't he? Why didn't he commit to Nebraska 8 months ago? Is he suddenly today a Nebraska legacy? Come on, man. Come on. All right, let me jump here. Mike Farino, Givler just posted three options article on there. I haven't even had a chance to read it yet. I jumped in on our internal channel. I said, I think this warrants a podcast. And I said, look, nobody's got to get on. I can handle this by myself. I've already gone longer than I'd anticipated because the numbers are a little higher than I anticipated. I know Tom and Tony were recording another show at the same time, and that Mark was going to write this. Okay, we shall see. You're triggered, so I'll let you relax. Thanks. You're real Minch. You're real Minch. Whatever. Um, what do you guys think is the next move? What do you guys honestly think is the next move? Who do they go after? Who do they go after? I mean, do they go after somebody? I mean, again, I have not read Mark's piece. Do you go after somebody like Jaden Davis? Do you go after somebody like Colin Hurley? What is the option there? Let me pull up the piece, and I'm not going to bring everything from outside the paywall. I just want to see what Mark's thoughts are. But we have to keep something here for we got to turn the lights on and pay the bills. I got to make my salary and everything else. So I'm going to see what he says. I want to see how much he agrees with me, and it's just not coming up at the moment. Uh Hey Zachary, I appreciate it. I just wanted to get on here and have an opportunity. Hell, I have a part-time gig that I work on the side too. I got to watch the Browns Ravens game today and produce a post-game show for that. So talk about banging my head into the wall. Thankfully, the Ravens are terrible, so hopefully it's a good game. I was watching that Cincinnati Louisville game and was not completely upset to have to leave that game to come up here and record with you guys. The one thing that I'm shocked with is that Kerry Combs is wearing sleeves. So atypical for him, but it'll be. I'm happy for Kerry Combs that he'll be part of Scott Satterfield's staff there at UC, and that he'll be able to continue there. But go on from that. Somebody wants to go a portal QB. We're talking about 2024. So what? At this point, Ohio State doesn't have to worry about it. There's not a scenario of where Dylan Raiola was playing at Ohio State next season. So going after a portal QB at this point doesn't mean anything. It means nothing unless you go after a young guy. And I'll tell you what happens if you do that. If you go after a portal QB this year, you run the risk of running off an or both situation between Kyle McCord and Devin Brown. Those are your guys that you have right now. None of this matters for the upcoming 23 season. Dylan Raiola was not going to be part of that equation, period. So everything we're talking about is a year out, So 12 months from now, maybe we're talking about something different. And I'm like, well, maybe the guy with the Chuck E. Cheese icon was right. Maybe they need to do that. But right now, at this point, it's immaterial. And honestly, I think that you want to go the route of getting a high school player who has 5 years to play for. And the truth of the matter is that if you end up locking in on a guy, you just want to you want to make sure you have the right numbers to where you have enough guys in your quarterback room. So, you kind of go from there. I'm skimming through comments. I know I asked for some comments and then I got off on another side jag there, so I apologize that. I mean, of course, there's a lot of Michigan versus Ohio State talk. I mean, that's the situation. I'm just picking things randomly. Dual threat quarterback. Well, that's what Lincoln Keenholz is. Lincoln Keenholz is a dual threat quarterback. He threw for 45 touchdowns last year, something like that, 45, 54, I don't remember. Ran for like another 24. They're going to be guys that can run. Devin Brown is much more of a dual threat quarterback than what we have seen, certainly under CJ. Kyle can run. I wouldn't put him in the Justin Fields type of running situation. I wouldn't put him in the Lincoln Keenholz running situation. But I think everybody that Ohio State has at quarterback now has a little bit more of an element of Q run. And I know that's really been a hot button issue. And I know that's going to be a hot button issue in terms of talking about the upcoming Peach Bowl. And we're going to have a lot of content coming up about the upcoming Peach Bowl. Once again, another reason, not going to make a pitch for the website. Now I'm going to make a pitch for all of you to make sure you subscribe to Buckeye Huddle's channel here on YouTube so you don't miss a single thing. Hit that bell. You'll be alerted whenever we're going to go live with any of our shows, including the Big Me Kickoff, Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning, the Buckeye Weekly Podcast, the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast. So make sure you sign up for all of that. All it takes is hitting a button there. But then also sign up for Buckeye Huddle. It would mean a lot to all of us. Somebody joking here in the chat that Ohio State needs a GoFundMe page. Isn't that what NIL is in the first place? Isn't it just a gigantic GoFundMe page? So in terms of trying to crack on Ohio State, you really have just boiled down what NIL is. It's GoFundMe. I mean, it just can't be university directed. It's just a GoFundMe to be able to compensate players and recruits. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting, but I know that we've got great numbers right now, but I'm just repeating myself and I'm pissing some people off and other people are happy. And now the dog fans have come in. They'll probably start barking at me in a minute. So I'm looking forward to that. I lived in Atlanta for a couple months in the 90s during an internship. So I've witnessed that firsthand. Um, I'll tell you this, D Brown. If he signs, if he signs with Nebraska, I'll apologize. And when he doesn't sign with Nebraska, I don't know. Is it going to be a matter? Are you going to give us a super chat or are you going to sign up for Buckeye Huddle? You let me know on that. And we'll go from there. He's not going to Nebraska. He's not going to Nebraska. My guy Treasure here. I love you, Treasure. I'm not upset at all, Kevin. I know there're just some people. I've just read some stuff in here about, a chat's a chat's a chat's a chat. And, I want to go grab some lunch because, again, I have to leave here in 90 minutes to go ahead and go watch the Browns game. Be in position to watch the Browns game at 4:30. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But I will just tell you right now, Ohio State recruiting is not dead. And I know there are a lot of people out there that are going to be upset about that. Some of them may even be Ohio State fans who are convinced that the dark days are upon us and that the platinum days of Jubilee have passed. They're still fine. Ohio State can still go to the Peach Bowl, prove some of its goals at that point. And even if it doesn't, Ohio State recruiting is still not dead. But I'm not going to diminish the fact that this is a big kick in the crotch. It's difficult, but Ohio State will move on. And it'll be fine. So you kind of go from there. But I want to thank you all for joining us as here on this emergency edition of the Big Me Kickoff. Again, not a show I planned on doing. Came in with zero prepared material. As always, you guys carry the show, even the haters. But until next time, I will talk to you guys very soon.